And the only people in this whole building is me and Marcia. All of a sudden, my phone notification goes off and I look and it says, the time is now. Invite someone to church. And I was like, oh no. And so I war with God for a good 2 minutes. And God was like, no, you're going to Marcia.
How would you respond if the Holy Spirit randomly prompted you to share the gospel with someone that you don't know? We're continuing our Evangelism When series this week with a conversation about a scenario that leaves many of us feeling more than just a little nervous. Evangelism When I'm talking to a stranger. We're joined by InterVarsity alumna and veteran InterVarsity staff, April Foat, and she's going to share about the day when she was prompted to have a spiritual conversation with Marcia, the barista at her local coffee shop. And the two of them had not had positive interactions up to this point either, which is why Marcia's response caught April so off guard. It's an amazing story, and it's going to leave you feeling better equipped to share the gospel with someone you really don't know yet. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. April, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So glad to have you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. April, before we dive in too deep, would you just help our listeners get to know you a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is April Foat, and I am on staff with InterVarsity. I've actually been on staff for 12 years. John and I were in the same new staff formation class.
That's right. So and it was epic.
It was a lot of fun. I was really shy and awkward during that time.
You and me both, April. I don't remember that about you. I remember that about me, though.
Oh, great. Well, good. I'm glad that we're both there. But yeah, I've worked for InterVarsity for 12 years. And right now I serve as an area director in the Wisconsin Northeast area. So I supervise 9 staff on 9 different campuses. So there's never a dull day in my life.
Yes.
But outside of InterVarsity, I also am a mom. I have a 3-year-old and I'm married to my wonderful husband, Adam. We've been married for 6 years. And then in my free time, what I like to do is crochet. That I know I'm a grandma, basically. I'm not. Jonathan's 3. It'll be a while.
That's awesome. Yes.
Yes. But I like to crochet, and most of what I crochet, I actually make little plushies and I donate them to our Awana program at church. And then I also donate them. We sell them for short-term mission trips at our church. So we get to raise a lot more money than I would be able to donate by selling my crochet plushies. That's
super cool. Do you have is there a particular plushie that you have come across that you're most proud of making?
Yes. So I have a dragon pattern. I did not design this pattern, so I can't take credit for that. But it's a dragon. It's really long. And I use this metallic yarn down the spine of it. So it's this shiny golden dragon. And I've made a few of them and they always sell. So yeah.
That is amazing. That is definitely not your grandma's work, though. So, I mean, you may identify as a grandma, but you're doing very different work than my grandma would have done.
Well, thanks, God. I will take that and I will run with it.
That's super cool. Super cool. Well, April, I'm glad that you're here with us because we are in a series here in the new year. We're talking about evangelism after graduation. And I think that on our best of days, many of us maybe feel a little nervous about the possibility of sharing the gospel with someone.
I resonate with that.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that, actually, as one of our expert people that's going to come on here and share some of this. But one of the things that stands out to me as a potential scenario people might find themselves in is one of those where the Holy Spirit really just prompts you that there's somebody right here in the room with you that you don't know, but I want you to take a step of faith. And I would like for you to share me with this person. And that prospect is quite scary to me. Speaking for myself, that's a scary prospect. But it's not outside of the realm of possibility, as you are going to share with us today.
Yes.
So April, you're gonna tell us a story, and then maybe you're gonna break down some of the how would you encourage other alumni that maybe find themselves in that place to be able to make that situation maybe more accessible. So
absolutely,
let's start with the story because I'm really excited to hear the story that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, a few years ago, before I was married, I lived in the downtown area of my town where I was staffing in the local InterVarsity campus. And I have ADHD. And so working from home does not work for me. I cannot do it. And so there was a coffee shop that was like a 5-minute walk from my apartment door. And I frequented that coffee shop more than I would like to admit.
It happens.
Yeah, for sure. And so I would go there pretty often. And there was a barista there named Marcia. And Marcia is like such a sweet person, always kind, always very quick at getting coffee ready. And so I got to know her in the way that you get to know someone over like the 5 minutes you're making an order for your coffee.
Yes.
And we really didn't have too many like notable interactions except for like 2 exceptions. So I had the opportunity once to ask her if I could pray for her. So she had shared, you do the, how are you doing today? And for whatever reason, she chose honesty that day and she wasn't doing well.
Man.
Yeah. And so she shared, a personal situation. I said, oh my gosh, like I would love to pray for you. And she kind of gave me the like deer in the headlights and just like, no, thank you.
Okay.
And so
first step rejection.
Yeah. And so I just kind of was like, okay, like, whatever. So got my coffee, like hid in the back room. Like, that was weird. I'm never talking to her again. And so we did that. And then there was one other day, probably about a week before this story happens, actually, that I was having a bad day. And Marcia had like royally screwed up my order. And that happens, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
I was like, so I'm Midwest, right? So we're a different level of nice, I think, in the Midwest, but that day I was not. I was actually kind of snippy with her. And I think I said something, this is so embarrassing to admit, but I think I said something to the effect of like, it's not that hard. And like immediately I was like, oh no,
man.
Like, I just offered, she knows I'm a Christian. I offered to pray for her one day. And I like totally was like, oh my gosh, I'm a jerk. And so for the next half hour, I like sat there and I was like, I'm so sorry, God, and whatever. And I just really felt like you need to go apologize. And so I just went up and I was like, hey, Marcia. And she kind of looked at me like, oh no, what else did I do wrong? And I was like, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, right? Like that wasn't nice to me, whatever. And she was so sweet and so gracious. And like, she was like, don't worry about it. Like that wasn't the worst I've gotten a day, which that makes me feel so much worse, right?
That's too bad.
But yeah, so these are kind of the background interactions we've had, right? So like, she knows I'm a Christian, she knows I'm a jerk, but at least I apologize.
So it's not like you exactly had a smooth runway preparing you for this takeoff here for the story you're about to tell. I think that makes everybody feel better, April, honestly.
Hopefully.
If there's anything scarier than maybe somebody you don't know at all, it's that the only thing I have on my list of interactions with this person is not necessarily positive ones. And we don't have trust built with each other yet. So here we go.
So here we go. So anyway, so at the time that this story takes place, I was beta testing an app for Crew. They were developing an app to help people do evangelism well. And kind of the premise was you would pick a challenge at the beginning of the week. And then at some time, you didn't know when, but the algorithm would like give you a pop-up notification where it's like, now's the time, right? And so I'd agreed to beta test it. It was a friend of mine who was working on it. And I thought, hey, this might be a good tool to use with students on campus to help them just kind of get out of their evangelistic shell, whatever. And so I'm like, okay, like that means I have to have some stories, right? Like I have to have used this, whatever, right? And so that week, I recall I chose the challenge, invite a friend to church. And I did this very strategically because I was meeting weekly with a non-Christian student, Margaret. And I just thought, hey, easy A, right? Like I'll just, I'll invite Margaret to church. This will be great, right? So I had my meeting with Margaret that week and she told me before like our interaction that she was going to be out of town that weekend. And I was like, no,
oh man,
I can't invite her to church. And then honestly, like I just kind of forgot about it. And so fast forward, it's Thursday and I'm sitting in this coffee shop and the only people in this whole building is me and Marcia and like maybe someone in the kitchen, but I can't access them. Right. Sure. And so, I'm checking my emails. I'm doing my thing on my computer. And then all of a sudden my phone notification goes off and I look and it says, the time is now. Invite someone to church. And I was like, oh no, I forgot I had agreed to this. Okay. And so I look up and there stands Marcia doing her, cleaning behind the counter, whatever. And so I like war with God for like a good 2 minutes. It's like,
oh my gosh.
Do I have to go do this? Can you send someone else into the room?
Please take this cup away from me.
Right? Yeah. And God was like, no, you're going to Marcia. Right.
Oh,
and so,
man.
So I leave my computer and I walk up to the bar and I just go, hey, Marcia, you got a second? She's like, oh yeah, what's up? What do you need? So I'm like, okay. So I think I said something effective, like, this is really weird. But I am wondering if you want to go to church with me this Sunday. And Marcia, again, deer in the headlights a little bit. And then she goes, it's funny you ask because this morning, yes, like I know this is so unbelievable. This morning, I was just thinking to myself that I need to figure out what I believe. I was like, what? People don't just do that, right? Like, that's weird. And so I was like, oh, tell me more. And she says, yesterday I was here working and one of our InterVarsity alumni volunteers frequented that coffee shop as well.
Okay.
And as she was delivering his coffee to him, he was talking with someone and he asked them the question, something like, if you died today, where would you end up? Right.
Yeah.
And like, whatever. He did not phrase that question to Marcia. Like he was just in his conversation and Marcia overheard it. And she said she was just so struck with that. And like, since then had been like, what do I do? How do I even figure out what I believe spiritually?
Wow.
Whatever. Right. And so all of a sudden now here comes April, like awkward as can be. Hey, Marcia, want to come to church? Right. And so she was like, I think I have to say yes, right? Like,
what?
Yeah, I know. And so I went to like giant mega church, at that time. It's really hard to navigate this building. And to make it weirder, I would meet like 20-year-old people at the church and we would all go to church together. Right. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so like, what a thing to invite someone into. Why did I do this?
And how old would you estimate that Marcia is?
Yeah, she was probably 25 at the time.
Oh, okay. So she's also in her 20s. All right.
Yeah. That is a good question.
Great.
Yeah. So she fits in. So I like do the whole like, oh, okay. Like you want to come to church? Awesome. Can I get your phone number? Right. And then like we're texting back and forth to arrange like, where is she meeting me at church? Like, whatever. And I just kind of give her the warning. Hey, there's like 20 of us. Like, right. Like, don't be scared.
Right?
Yeah. By the way, there's this one little thing.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
And so Marcia meets me at church. We meet at the bookshop and then we like walk. And like, of course, all of these friends from my small group that we go to church with are like being rambunctious and crazy and whatever. And so I like walk in and they all do the awkward, like, who's this? Like moment. So I introduce, this is Marcia. She's my friend from the coffee shop. She's here today to come to church, right? Whatever.
Be cool.
Be cool. Yeah, don't screw this up. And so she comes to church with us. Afterwards, we go out for lunch. She has to take off right after lunch because she has a shift.
Okay.
And so we didn't get to debrief, which like, in InterVarsity, we love our debrief, right?
Yes.
So
it didn't happen unless we debrief it.
I know, exactly. Yeah. So we didn't get to do our debrief, but I was able to follow up with her over text and just hear a little bit. And she kind of shared like, she grew up going to a pretty traditional church, which like, I love a good liturgy. I love a good liturgical church, but she had some really bad experiences in that setting. And the church that I went to was really contemporary. We had more contemporary worship music. The pastor wore jeans, right? And so for her, it was like a very surprising and different experience to attend a church like that. And she also actually really loved the community that she just kind of got like entered into.
Yeah.
And so Marcia ended up coming to church with me a few more times after that. Ultimately, she like one of the reasons she was so spiritually open was because she had like been considering this big cross-country move and she didn't know how to make a decision like that. She didn't have anyone who would like speak into that. And so part of like us getting to know each other and like her coming to church was like talking through some of those decisions. And I was able to just kind of give a like, well, I would pray about it. Can we pray together? And that time she said yes. And so,
nice.
Yeah. And so we got to have like a cool friendship together for, 2 months. And then she did end up moving across country, but we got her connected to a church. And so I pray that she's still seeking after Jesus today.
What a cool story. I mean, just the way it starts, you're like, this is not going to go well for me. And then and then it's just like, wow, it's almost like all of this was arranged, and and that you just got to be like a willing, even though nervous, willing participant in the midst of something that was already happening anyways. And that is just super cool. I love that story. And I love that there were like sort of baby steps of relationship building and preparation. It makes me think of the I can't remember exactly where it is, but it makes me think of the, one sows, another waters, another harvest, like one of that. You got to be somewhere in the like early to middle stages of that for her. And then she goes on to another season of life in a totally different place. But wow, super cool. April, as you think about that experience, are there, if you were to break it down into some element of like, if I were to find myself in this situation again, or if I was going to prepare someone who might, are there some like practical things that you pull out of that experience that you would say, here's a few things to keep in mind for the next time you encounter a stranger and maybe have an opportunity to share Jesus with them?
Absolutely. So I think the first one, I didn't do well, but I will share it as like learn from my mistakes. And I think that's to remember that you are an ambassador of God wherever you go. Yeah. And you like never know like the people that you're interacting with, if God later is going to give you an opportunity to share him with them. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think remember that and like, don't be like stressed and anxious about it, but just remember like, I might later be asked to invite this person to church or whatever.
Yes.
and treat people as though they are image bearers of God, because that's who we are, right? And then I guess if you're going to learn something from me, apologize. Do the like weird thing and apologize when you don't do that well. Marcia had shared later on that like one of the reasons that she felt she could say yes to coming to church with me was because I had apologized to her.
Wow.
And that just like showed her like, oh, this is someone who's like really trying to live out what she believes. And she like recognized she was wrong. And so like in some ways, I think God allowed me to be a jerk to her with the intention that I would apologize and I would repair and I would learn. Like I am very cautious when I interact with baristas now. For that reason.
That's really funny. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So there is a certain element of like, even if you don't necessarily have a prompt already, how is it that you are carrying yourself in front of people? And it doesn't mean that we need to be uptight and anxious about it, but be prepared. You might be the one. And so how do you want to present yourself? And when you screw up, apologize for it. And like, okay. Yes. Fascinating. Okay. And then what are some other things that you would recommend in this scenario?
So I think when you feel a prompting, right? And my prompting was an app telling me to do this thing, but like, God had arranged, right, that I was going to pick that challenge. He had arranged that I was going to be in that coffee shop, right? Like nothing's a coincidence. And so I think when you feel a prompting, follow it, even if there's like a million reasons you don't think you should. Right. And like, even if you have to do the internal, battle questioning, is this really what you're asking God? But do it, because like in Marcia's story, like you said, there was so much going on behind the scenes that I didn't know was happening. And like, if I would have known, she'd overheard Greg in the coffee shop and she was asking this question, it would have been really easy to quick go and say, hey, I want to invite you to church. But I didn't know those things. Like I just was doing what I felt God telling me to do in the moment. And it turns out he'd been weaving this beautiful tapestry together. And I was just one step of it. And so I think if you feel the prompting, do it and see what God does with it.
Yeah. Well, and it strikes me that that Marcia's experience of taking next steps towards Jesus they were not dependent on your obedience, April. Yes. Like God, like this, clearly God had something in the works. And he was like, April, do you want a chance to be a part of this story with me? I will do it either way, but here's your entrance into the story. And like, I just can't help but think that this is that you got to be an important, and not to make this all about you, because it's not about you, April, but at the same time, it feels like this was the on-ramp for you to have your unique influence on the story, the tapestry that God was putting together for Marcia. And that, maybe it would have been down the road or in a different way, but that, this was like, wow, you got to help her prepare by saying yes. And even though it was an app that prompted you, there was a prompt that came before that, which was the invitation to even participate in the app, in the beta testing. So yes. So say yes when the prompting comes, no matter what, even though things might encourage you to say no.
Yeah. And I love that, John, just like to remember, like, yes, God is at work. And when we're prompted, it's like him saying, hey, like, I'm doing this thing, like, come with me for the ride. Yeah. So I love that. Yes. Yeah. It's a great reminder.
Yeah. Any other elements that you would encourage people to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think the last one that I would say is that we as Christians tend to have practice in seeing God's fingerprints in our stories, right? We know that there isn't anything like a coincidence, right? That doesn't actually exist. And God is sovereign and he is working in ways unseen. But as Christians, we're really used to having prayer requests and then seeing them answered and, seeing the ways that God is orchestrating our lives for our good. And non-Christians don't have that. And so as a Christian, I think it's really good for us to use that practice and be ready to interpret what we see God doing in someone else's life. Toward the end of Marcia and my relationship before she moved across the country, we kind of sat down and I just said, like, Marcia, I have to share with you that it really feels like God's at work in your life. Like, here you're overhearing Greg, and then I invite you to church, and now you've been a part of this community, and like you've been able to share some really deep things. Like to me, that doesn't, like, it might feel like a coincidence to you, but to me, like, this is God at work in your life. Like, he is working to pursue you and he wants a relationship with you. And she was so stunned by that because, like, she had experienced all those things, but like, as I was sharing the story, John, you immediately knew that's God's work. She didn't realize that until I laid it out for her. And so I think being ready to say, like, hey, I don't know if you realize this, but God is working in your life. Like, that can actually be really significant for non-Christians, especially those who are seeking and are looking for what they want, like what they're going to believe or what they're going to follow, to be able to clarify some of those things for them, not in a manipulative way, but just saying, I have to show you what I'm seeing, I think can be really powerful as well. So that would be the other piece. Be ready to interpret.
Yeah. I love that because, when we think about sharing the gospel, I mean, literally telling people good news, it seems to me that part of the good news of the story is that, like, God is purposefully at work right now. This isn't just about, hey, good news, you get to go to heaven someday. It's like, God is at work in your life, like the inner workings of your life right now, and you just might not see it. And like, for somebody that doesn't frame their life that way, I would have to think that being like sort of shocked by the reality of the creator of the universe being like so in the fine details of your life, like you matter that much, that feels like good news in and of itself. That it's like, wow, okay, God is pursuing me here. I thought that I had to like go on this treasure hunt to find God somehow, and it's actually that he's like pursuing me. Holy cow, that's really good news.
Absolutely, yeah, that's great.
Interesting. Okay, so then April, as we think about, you've given some very helpful practical tips for us here. And we can have all of the practical tips in the world and probably still feel a little nervous, like a little concerned about the what if. Like, yes, I want to be a part of the really cool stories that God's writing, but there's like a lot of awkwardness that I have to maybe step through first. And so, and my guess is that there's somebody listening to this episode right now who is either currently you said it was like 2 minutes of you kind of warring with God before you like, are you sure? I'll bet there are people who are listening right now, April, who are in the midst of one of those, like, oh, I feel like God has prompted me to speak to my neighbor, my coworker, fill in the blank, and I just don't know that I want to do it. Or I can't help but think that there might be somebody who's listening today that tomorrow might be the day that they get that prompt. And maybe it's you and me. I don't know, April. So maybe even if it's just for me, do you have like just a final word of encouragement or something that you would give for somebody who does or might very soon find themselves in this circumstance?
Yeah, I think I would just say, like, choose to trust God, right? Because even in the place where I made a mistake with Marcia, right? I was a jerk to her. God actually used that, right? And so I think, like, just trust that God is weaving a bigger story for that person. And God is weaving a bigger story for you. I took so much from my friendship with Marcia. And it's only because I just chose to trust God in the moment, even as I was like not wanting to do this. I was super awkward and like walking up to the bar at the coffee shop, you know, right? I think just choose to trust God. And if it feels like a fail, it may be that he's preparing you or that person or whatever for something in the future. And so trust him, do it, and then like go cry on your pillow if you need to. I certainly did. But follow where he leads.
Just follow where he leads, alumni. You won't have the whole story, but you can be certain that God is including you in something meaningful for his kingdom, something meaningful for that person you don't know, and for you too. I'm certain that if I'd asked, April would say she still doesn't do this perfectly. But I'll bet she would also say that because she said yes in this situation and got to see how God used her with Marcia, that her faith grew and that her confidence in following Jesus' lead was strengthened. And not every story will end the way this one did, but you can be certain that it always pays off to follow his lead. April, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you for your obedience to God's prompting to invite Marcia to church. It's not about us, but we have definitely gotten to experience the benefits today. Alumni, be sure to come back next week as we continue our evangelism series as we discuss evangelism when my neighbor practices a different faith. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Centera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.